The gym smelled faintly of sweat and disinfectant, that oddly familiar blend of determination and discipline, as the late afternoon sun slanted through the dusty high windows, casting golden streaks across the worn mats that had seen countless hours of blood, sweat, and quiet triumph. The muffled thuds of gloves meeting heavy bags echoed steadily in the background like the heartbeat of the place, a rhythm every fighter knew instinctively, and I was leaning against the cool steel of the ring ropes, my water bottle sweating in my palm after my last spar, my body still humming with that pleasant post-fight fatigue, when Liam R., resident black belt, local champion, an unofficial king of the gym, began speaking louder than usual, his voice carrying effortlessly over the rhythmic smack of leather and the faint hum of the air conditioner, that signature cocky edge lacing his words as he laughed and said, "Man, I need a real challenge today. All these kids are too easy." A declaration that drew a few smirks and side glances, but no real answers. Because everyone knew Liam was good, very good fast. Strong, precise, and brimming with the confidence of someone who had rarely been humbled inside these walls. His eyes, sharp and restless, scanned the room for a worthy opponent until, almost lazily, they landed in the far corner where Samuel, the janitor, moved with slow, steady efficiency as he mopped the entrance area, his faded blue work shirt hanging loosely over his frame, his salt and pepper hair slightly damp from the lingering summer heat. His presence so quiet it was almost as if he were part of the gym itself. Always there, yet rarely noticed, offering polite nods or soft-spoken greetings, but never lingering in conversation, never sharing much beyond the surface. Liam's smirk widened with a kind of mischievous spark, and he called out, "Hey Sam, you ever throw a punch? Let's spar just for fun." His tone light, but tinged with that competitive curiosity fighters get when they think they've found an easy win. And instantly the gym's soundscape shifted, the gloves kept hitting bags. The jump ropes kept worry, but beneath it all there was a subtle change. A pause in the air as conversations faltered, and a few muffled laughs rose from the sidelines. Because the image of the gym's cocky champion sparring with the quiet janitor was as absurd as it was unexpected. Samuel paused mid-swipe, resting his weight on the mop handle as he looked up, his eyes steady, his voice calm and almost detached, as he replied, "You sure you want that?" And there was no bravado in the question, no playful banter, just a plain statement that, in hindsight, carried far more weight than we realized in that moment. But Liam, grinning like a man who had already written the ending of this little story, shrugged and said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll go easy." And for a beat, Samuel simply looked at him, then at Coach Reynolds, who stood nearby with arms crossed, one eyebrow raised as if silently asking whether Liam had truly thought this through, but saying nothing, leaving the choice entirely to the two men. Then, without another word, Samuel set the mop in its stand, turned, and walked toward the locker room, the sound of his slow, measured footsteps barely audible over the ambient noise, yet somehow drawing the eyes of nearly everyone in the gym. He emerged a few minutes later, dressed not in any flashy gear but in old, faded black training pants and a plain white t-shirt. The kind of outfit that made him look less like a fighter and more like someone about to help move furniture, yet something about the way he carried himself, shoulders relaxed but squared, steps unhurried yet deliberate, made a few people exchange curious glances. Whispers rippled quietly through the gym as Liam, full of restless energy, hopped into the ring, bouncing lightly on his toes, shadowboxing a few quick combinations for the benefit of anyone watching, while Samuel approached the ropes with no rush at all, ducked under the top strand, and moved to the center of the ring, rolling his neck side to side, then stretching his arms in smooth arcs before settling into a stance so relaxed it almost looked careless, his hands low, his gaze soft, his weight evenly balanced. The bell rang, sharp and clear, and Liam came forward immediately with a playful flurry of light jabs, clearly signaling that this was all in good fun, his shots probing, testing, barely more than taps. But Samuel simply angled his body slightly, letting the punches pass harmlessly by, his feet shifting with quiet efficiency, his head moving just enough to avoid contact. And when Liam grinned and said, "Come on, man, show me something," it was as if he had flipped a switch, because, in the very next instant, Samuel's eyes, sharpened with a focus that was almost tangible. His posture changing subtly as he stepped forward, catching Liam's lead jab with a soft parry, and in the same fluid motion, delivering a jab of his own, so fast and precise that most of the spectators missed it entirely until they saw Liam's head snap back, just a fraction. His grin faltering as his brain caught up to the fact that he had just been tagged clean. "Okay. Nice," Liam muttered, his tone more serious now, and they began to circle. The tempo shifting as Liam threw a low kick toward Samuel's lead leg, a kick that met with the firm, unyielding block of Samuel's shin in a perfectly timed check that made the impact resonate audibly through the ring. And before Liam could pull his leg back, Samuel answered with a low kick of his own that cracked sharply against Liam's thigh, the sound loud enough to draw a collective murmur from the crowd, and Liam's brief wince didn't go unnoticed. Gone was the easy smile as Liam reset his stance and began throwing tighter, faster combinations with real intent. But each time Samuel was simply not there, his torso slipping just outside the line of attack, his feet pivoting with economical grace, his hands deflecting strikes with the minimal energy required, his breathing so calm, it seemed almost detached. His eyes never leaving the center of Liam's chest, reading his movements before they happened. Then, without warning, Samuel stepped into range and let loose a crisp, three-punch combination, a snapping jab, straight cross, and a compact left hook, all landing flush with a sound that cut cleanly through the noise of the gym, the thud of glove against headgear, carrying a weight that made a few onlookers wince in sympathy, and Liam staggered back a step, more surprised than hurt, his eyes narrowing as the reality of the situation began to sink in. From ringside, I heard someone whisper, "Who is this guy?" And as if answering the question, Coach Reynolds, who had been watching silently until now, called out in a voice that carried across the mats, "Liam, you're fighting a man who was a national Muay Thai champion before you were even born." And the collective gasp that followed was almost comical in its suddenness. But inside the ring, Liam didn't laugh. He surged forward with one last burst of aggression, spinning into a back kick meant to catch Samuel off guard. But Samuel was already moving, sliding out of the kick's arc with effortless timing and tapping Liam lightly on the back as he passed. A gesture as casual as it was conclusive, and a split second later the bell rang, signaling the end of the round. The end of the spar, the end of any illusions about who Samuel really was. Liam was breathing hard now, sweat dripping down his temples, his chest heaving as he pulled out his mouthguard, while Samuel, barely winded, removed his own and extended a hand with a faint, genuine smile as he said, "Good fight," and the gym erupted in applause, not the wild, chaotic cheers of a competitive victory, but the warm, resonant applause that comes from witnessing something pure and humbling, a reminder of why we train in the first place. Liam took Samuel's hand and shook it firmly, bowing his head just slightly in acknowledgement, saying, You could have destroyed me." And Samuel, with a shrug that seemed to carry decades of perspective, replied, "Sparring isn't about destroying. It's about learning." A sentence so simple, yet so profound, that it seemed to hang in the air long after they left the ring. From that day forward, Samuel was no longer just the janitor. He was the quiet warrior whose skill and discipline had been honed over a lifetime. His humility was as deep as his mastery, and though he never bragged, never reminded anyone of. That afternoon, the story of the janitor and the black belt became a kind of quiet legend within the gym, retold whenever someone underestimated another person. A living lesson that respect should be given not based on appearances or titles, but on the unseen depth of experience that some carry quietly, like a hidden blade, until the moment it's called into play.